The project at hand today is going to be improving this dog bowl holder for little Miss Lulu here and Teddy. A couple things that need to be improved is the mounting hardware. It's in the top of the bowl. That's not the top of the bowl, the top of the tray. So that's not fantastic. The water gets in there and sits in there, and food gets in there and sits in there. And it is wobbly. So don't love the wobbly. And it doesn't really match the rest of the kitchen. So I'm going to try and make it match this buffet table here. And then what I do really like is that detail across the bottom of the drawers there. I like how that looks, and I think I'm going to try and mirror that across the front of the holder here. It'll mask or hide the bottom of the bowls, and I think it'll just make it look nice. Lulu here agrees that this is a good idea. Right, Lulu? Lulu just wants attention, but that's okay. So that is what we're going to do, and stick around and you'll see me go from this to this. And you'll get to see me use some scrap wood and some other tools and show you the whole process start to finish. And the first step is a little bit of layout work. So I'm using this square here to mark for the two sides and the top of the dog bowl holder here. And for wood, I am using a piece of scrap poplar that was a stair riser from when I built the house. Next, I'm a big fan of transfer measurements, so I'm going to use my first side to mark for the second side and then make another cut. Then after one more quick marking, I do one final cut for the length of the top. So I find a great way to practice woodworking is by copying existing pieces, and fortunately I've got an existing piece which makes marking for these holes for the bowls very simple. Here I'm drilling two quick holes, so I've got room for my jigsaw blade to get down inside the board and then make this circular cut. With the holes drilled, I'm going to cut out both sides with a skill saw, and I'll stay just inside the line and do my final finishing with some sandpaper. With the sanding complete, I'm going to cut a piece of scrap that will serve as the front fascia of the dog bowl holder. Since I find the easiest way to get something to match is just to trace it or use it as a template, I'm doing just that. I'm temporarily holding the wood with some nice spring clamps, and then I am tracing the pattern, so it will match the front of the buffet table perfectly. After a couple more quick cuts with the jigsaw, this piece is all ready to go. For assembly, I'm going to use a combination of pocket screws and wood glue. So here I am drilling in for a couple of the pocket screws on the left and right uprights. I'm using a Kreg pocket hole jig. It's pretty straightforward. It comes with a little measuring stick to set the stop collar on the drill bit, and then just a nice simple vice grip for clamping onto a piece of wood whenever you want to position it and move it around. There are other more professional versions of these jigs, but for the small number of woodworking projects I'm doing at the moment, this was more than sufficient. Next, I cut the trim piece to its final size. And then to finish this piece, I give it its own series of pocket holes. And then last up before assembly is sanding. I used 120 grit and then 220 grit sandpaper. For wood glue, I'm using Titebond Type 3. It is a waterproof glue for interior-exterior, and since this is probably going to be perpetually wet in some fashion because of the dog bowls, I figure it's the best way to play it safe. Alright, and now your eyes are not deceiving you here. I am taking this back apart because I split the edge of the wood
by the circular cutout for the bowl, so I'm going to wipe all the glue off and kind of inspect the damage here. So this was definitely a learning experience for me. My tactic for fixing it was to just pry it apart a little bit, get a little bit of wood glue into the crack, and then just wipe up the surface where all the excess squeezed out, and then reassemble it. But this time I did it under clamp pressure, so it would hopefully not split the wood again. Alright, so as you guys saw, that did not go as planned. I split the wood right here, and I got a little hairline crack there as well. So I've got it clamped up in two directions. I'm not sure I'm super happy with this any longer, but I'm going to see what I can do to salvage it. We'll see what happens. I'll try the other side, take a couple more precautions, sand this up and see if it's salvageable. Alright, so the next day, after the one side has dried, the assembly continues. And for precautions, the first thing I'm doing is not using the impact driver anymore. I'm switching just to the straight drill driver with the clutch that I can significantly step down the torque on, so I don't over torque those bits into the wood. And here's my other precaution. I am clamping the width of this piece as well to not only align it, but I found that in this case, at least, it kept the wood from splitting. And that was either a combination of a clamp and the different drill driver, or just the drill driver. But in either case, this side went much better than the first. And time for one more round of sanding to make sure all those joints line up cleanly. This was the point in the project I realized I had made a mistake, not with the stand itself, but I hadn't discussed it with my wife yet. When I showed her, it turns out the old stand had sentimental value. It belonged to Astrid, her dog who had passed last year, and who gets credit for bringing us together. So I spent the next couple days working on the stain, trying to come up with a good solution to my problem. So I got a recommendation to try this pre-stain, so I don't have any blotching when I go ahead and put on my final wood stain. And I'm trying to match my cherry cabinets, so I am using a cognac color one, which actually looks a lot more like the dark cherry than the cherry colored. So the pre-stain is pretty self-explanatory. You put it on before stain. And the instructions say, before staining, apply pre-stained wood conditioner on clean, raw wood using a brush or a cloth. 2. Allow to penetrate for 5 to 15 minutes and then remove excess with a clean, dry cloth. Apply stain within 2 hours of the application of pre-stained wood conditioner. For best results, use the same brand. But I'm going to use Varathane. I should be just fine, and we're going to see how this turns out. Directions for staining are pretty similar to the pre-stain. It says for best results, use between 60 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm inside, and my basement's about 60 degrees right now. Apply 1 coat of stain liberally with a brush or clean lint-free rag. Allow to penetrate for 2 to 3 minutes, then remove excess by wiping rag in the direction of the grain. Longer penetration will lead to a darker color. So with the grain is going to be in this direction, and then across the drain would be this direction. And here we are, all stained up, and now I can just wait for this to dry so it can be coated with a couple coats of polyurethane. And before the first coat, I wipe down the entire surface with a tack cloth that just picks up any bits of dust, debris, or just anything that might have settled on it before the first coat goes on. Preparing the polyurethane is pretty simple. It is stir, not shake, and then it is getting brushed on in the direction of the grain. And I had a bit of a hard time with just my overhead lighting, so I found using an LED light to illuminate the surface made a big difference in seeing what I was doing. Tried to let each coat cure for about 12 hours, and then I lightly sanded it with some very fine grit sandpaper, and then went over it again with the tack cloth, picking all that dust up before doing 3 coats in total. It was a little earlier on this day I finally had some inspiration, and a friend came through for me pretty quickly. I had a brass tag made that reads, "In memory of Astrid," to be mounted on the front of the stand, and I'm happy to report that this got me out of the figurative doghouse. I wanted to be extra careful here, so I marked the depth I needed to pre-drill for the screws with some tape, and then just very carefully drove these 2 screws after marking their location with some painter's tape. So here's what we started with. And here is the finished product. So I really enjoyed building this piece. It was a fun little challenge, and I thought it was a great piece to practice with. I'm looking forward to doing some other woodworking here in the future, and probably building a pantry or something along those lines next. And I think the curves I cut and the staining work I did and the gluing and the pocket screws, are all that experience is going to come in handy in that next project. And I'm very happy to report this appears to be doggy approved. If you found this video helpful or you enjoyed it, leave me a comment or subscribe to the channel. Both would help me out a lot. Thanks for watching.